To Sacred Matrix, a divine paradigm of love and universal consciousness, with your host, Janet Kira Lessin and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Together, we transform the world.
And now, here are your hosts, Janet Kira and Dr. Sasha Lessin.
Aloha, everybody, and welcome to Sacred Matrix. I'm your host, Janet Kira Lessin, with my co-host, Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin. Our producer is Debra DeFranco, and you're listening to Revolution Radio Studio B. And today our guest is Elizabeth April, and she's a cosmic intuitive channeler who has the ability to go into other realms and dimensions in order to gain access to information. She specializes in channeling past lives, both on and off the planet. She has a YouTube channel, and she gives readings and insights. And I have more information on Elizabeth on aquarianradio.com with lots of pictures. And her website is elizabethapril.com. Sasha, now Elizabeth's been on our show several times, but it's been over 2 years. Wow, time flies. What would you like to say?
Well, I'd like to start out by saying Merry Mithras Day to everybody. Mithras was the a guy whose birthday was celebrated on the 25th of December, the date of the Saturnalia, when the Romans decided to place Jesus' birthday. They chose to make it on the same day so they could absorb the ritual of Mithra, and Christianity could be used for the entire Roman world at that time. So, Merry Mithras.
Sasha's been researching a new book he's writing, so he's deep in the stories. So, welcome back, Elizabeth. How are you doing? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's so nice to be back. It's crazy that it's been 2 years. I mean, I feel like in so many ways 2020 has been a black hole, I think, for a lot of people. So it's really nice to be back and talking with the two of you.
So what's been going on for you? You've got a wonderful website. It seems like you're doing a lot of good works in the world. Tell us about your life, and we like to start with, since this has been 2 years since the last show, your background and how you got into this. And I understand you're Contact the Experiencer. So how about you talk for about 15 minutes or so, and then we'll ask you questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm 28 now, and I was an experiencer as a kid, but I didn't actually realize it until the age of 24, where I got my first quantum hypnosis regression session, and I went back into childhood, and I, kind of awoken to the fact that I was abducted multiple times in childhood, and I was actually taught and trained up on a ship, something that I like to call Earth School. And so even as a kid, I was born with a lot of extrasensory abilities, the ability to tap into energies, to feel sensations that a lot of people couldn't feel and see, seeing chakras and auras and ghosts and spirits, and even talking telepathically to interdimensional beings. Now, of course, I didn't have any of that language back then, and I actually didn't even realize that what I was doing was abnormal at all. I think as kids, a lot of us just believe that what we're experiencing, everyone else is experiencing. So I kind of went through this phase of shutting down a lot of my abilities just to fit in, just to conform, just to be like every other kid. And then it wasn't until the age of 16 where I really reawakened my abilities by getting a past life regression with my dad. And during that regression at 16, we went into about 5 different past lifetimes. And typically all of these past lives, I was a philosopher or a healer or some sort of channeler, or informant. And that really woke me up at that age to once again, what my mission was in this lifetime, what I really came here to do. And so at 16, I remember taking my dad's past life regression book, his notebook. I copied all of his regression techniques. And when I went off to university at 18, that's when I started to give other people, especially students at my university, past life regressions, just to kind of dabble around in the world and see what was going on. Around this time, I was also really opening myself up to astral traveling, lucid dreaming, telepathic communication. A lot of my psychic and spiritual abilities were coming back to me tenfold at that time. Now, of course, at this point, I did not recall the abductions in childhood. As a matter of fact, if you asked me at 18 if I believed in aliens, I would have said that there's something out there in the universe, but, I wouldn't think that they would even bother with human beings. So it was around that time where I went away to a 10-day meditation retreat, and I ended up getting abducted by interdimensional beings. For the first conscious time, I should say. And, it wasn't a very loving abduction experience. It was quite fear-based. And I know that I needed to go through that for a reason. But what that abduction really allowed me to do was allow me to remember that aliens do exist, that they are here on this planet. And it opened me up to a world of questions. Well, who are they? And why are they on this planet? What do they want with humans? And if they are here for human beings, then why us? Why here? Why now? Why are we so special? And from, that was about 10 years ago. So in the past 10 years, I've really been, honing in on these questions and answers and deep diving into the Akashic history of the planet and working with thousands of clients all over the world just to kind of really experience past lifetimes, both on and off this planet, and get to really understand, who we are as a species and really how we came to be here and why we're here now, why it's so significant. And I just want to say that throughout this journey that I've been on, it's really been a lonely one. It's really, it's been difficult for me to turn to friends or family members who are kind of on that level. And I'm sure that, Janet, you and Sasha have noticed this, but 2020 really spiked and really brought forward this incredible grand awakening. And I think that there's been this sigh of relief within all of the light workers and the star seeds and the teachers on this planet of, oh, finally, they're finally waking up. They're finally getting it. They're finally being pulled away from their matrix reality, so it's a very exciting time to be alive right now. And the progression is happening so rapidly, definitely faster than I could ever anticipate or imagine. So I'm just super happy to be here, super happy to help the world ascend and awaken and understand their existence.
Well, wow, there's a lot to unpack there. Thanks for that. Sasha, did you have any questions or comments?
What was frightening about the experience?
Yeah, let's see, you had experience when you were on the 10-day retreat. You said it wasn't very loving. It was fear-based. So let's unpack that one. What was going on? You were on a retreat. Were you like a cabin or where were you, in a tent? What's going on?
Yeah, we were in kind of like a group living situation. It was called Vipassana, so a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And, it's a kind of a prime place to abduct someone. Not only can the humans, they're not home, right? They're in the middle of the woods, but they can't talk, right? They can't talk about their experience. It's a silent meditation retreat. So so I think the scariest part about it was just the fact that I had no prior conscious knowledge of interdimensionals, but also the fact that the vibration of the beings themselves just wasn't very loving. They were specifically there to abduct humans, to experiment on them, to chip them, and to follow them. And that's precisely what they did. It was a very fast, kind of moment, but once again, also a very conscious moment. And they ended up putting a chip, kind of a tracking device, I would say, into my right ear. And I was very consciously aware of that entire experience. And I felt them following me and watching me for a couple of weeks after the experience until I could go to a psychic, and she did a little bit of psychic surgery and got the chip that was in my ear deactivated. So that's kind of, and the species that took me.
What species was that? Are you aware of
Yeah.
the different alien species? Who was it?
Yeah, so that time it was the tall whites. I mean, it's a pretty general name for a species, but basically they were tall, maybe around 7 or 8 feet tall, very pale skin, almost like translucent skin, very small eyes, could have been like small red eyes, but humanoid for the most part, 2 legs, 2 arms, and also very kind of white, pale, thin, straggly hair as well. And so when they took me, basically what the psychic said that I went to a couple weeks after the experience, she ended up seeing the chip in my ear before I even told her that I got chipped or that I had some sort of experience. So that was pretty validating. But basically the way that she described it was, she said that these beings were up on a ship and they were looking down at planet Earth and observing the retreat center. And they just said that, she just said that they saw this bright shining light and it was me as this human being. And so they were so curious as to why my vibration was so different than the other humans that they wanted to basically abduct me and chip me and see what I was doing that was just different, I guess, than the rest of, humanity or what have you. And I think it's just because I have higher than normal connections to interdimensionals and abilities at that time anyway.
Were you awake or asleep when they came?
I was asleep when they came. It was around 3 a.m. And then I woke up and I actually thought it was my boyfriend who was over top of me. I just saw this giant white round head, kind of like a gray head, but once again, smaller eyes. And I believe that they sprayed something right around my mouth. So when I inhaled it, basically I went, I was paralyzed. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. But I was very awake from that point on. My eyes were open. I could observe everything. I could, see them watching me. They took me out of my bed. They took me out of my bed in the retreat center and they, walked me over to the middle of the hallway in this retreat center, which was shared with many other women. And, apparently no one saw this. And then from the hallway, we just basically got beamed up to the ship. The only part that I don't consciously remember is how they got me from the hallway to their ship and then to their ship back down. Like, I'm kind of thinking because I don't remember the in between, it might have been some sort of direct teleportation thing. I'm not totally sure how that technology works. But yeah, I mean, I remember, it's just very, very vivid. Them pulling me from my bed, sitting me in this metal chair up on their ship, and then this device going into my right ear and then putting something in there. And then all of a sudden, they put me back into my bed and it was pretty quick.
Now, did they communicate with you at all?
Nope, there was absolutely zero communication. No, there was zero telepathy. And like I said, this is definitely one of the more, I wouldn't even call them nefarious. Like from the downloading and the exploration that I've done on that species, they really just are here for technology transfer. So because their species is dying, they've made deals with, different governments around the world. And they said, hey, if you let us abduct 30,000 humans per year, we'll give you this sort of technology. And they're just here to save their species. They don't care about human beings. They don't care about consciousness, evolution. They don't care about any of that stuff. And luckily that was the first and last time I ever dealt with that species.
Now, did you interact, what other species have you interacted with? And was that before or after that episode?
So when I was a kid, like I mentioned, between the age of 4 and 13, I was abducted about 6 times. And during this QHHT session at 24, I had extremely vivid recall and memory and flashback right into those ages, which was so incredible to re-experience at an older age and have those memories come back to me. I was taken at that time by two short little grays, and I call them Tweedledee and Tweedledum because, they weren't very smart, but they were very loving, and they ended up, I guess teleporting into my room, for those 6 times. It was always the same two short little grays, and they were the ones to transport me from my room, as a kid up onto their ship. And when we went on to this giant mothership, the first time I went, I was 4 years old, and it looked like a giant classroom, really, a really giant open, kind of like what I would consider kind of like a university classroom. It had all of these desks, no technology or anything, just desks and chairs, and then a big it kind of looked like a blackboard, but there was no chalk or anything. It actually looked like the tall gray that was at the front of the room was drawing on the blackboard with his finger. And then in the audience, or I guess the classroom portion of it, were all these kids, and they all ranged in age from probably around 6 to also maybe 10, 12 years old. And they were also all in their pajamas, their hair's everywhere. Clearly they were all taken as well, in the middle of the night, and they were a part of the same sort of program that I was a part of, which I call, Earth School. Because they taught us about quantum physics. They taught us about energy. They taught us about movement. They taught us about electromagnetism. They taught us about all of this stuff and consciousness, at that time. And so this was like a reoccurring sort of abduction experience that I had, like I said, about 6 times. And they taught me something different every time. And that was by the Greys. And I know now that I'm very connected to the Greys.
Did you ever meet any of the other kids, and do you know them now?
Yeah, good question. There have been, I think honestly, there was one kid who was my client a couple of years ago, and we discerned that we were a part of the same program. For most of my abduction experiences, I was actually taught individually and solo. So I wasn't around a lot of the kids. And I'll just kind of relate to you probably one of there's 2 very profound experiences that I had with them as a kid, but I'll relate the first experience that I had. And, it was when I was 4 years old. So I remember the short grays taking me, and I even remember getting out of my bed and holding their hand and thinking that they were so big because I was so small, even though the short grays were still pretty short, but just for like a height comparison. And when they took me up, so I saw the big classroom room that was very open, but when I was 4, they ended up taking me into a much smaller room with kids who were more so around my age, like younger ages, like 3, 4, 5 years old. And it was like this pure, like kind of like, I guess, really bright white room. And it was smaller, like I said. So when the doors opened up to this room and this gray was leading me into the room, there was about probably 4 or 5 other small kids in the room, and they were all sitting down in a circle. And there was one place open in the circle for me to sit down. So I intuitively knew that I was going to go sit down with these other children. So I sit down, and in the center, and so the door closes. There's no grays in the room. It looks like there's no doors, no windows. It's just a small room with these kids. And we're all sitting down in this circle. And in the center of the circle are all of these different shapes. So at first glance, it looks like these kids have these toys to play with. And they looked like dark gray, 3-dimensional shapes, right? So you've got a sphere, you've got, I guess, squares or blocks, right? And you've got triangles, like pyramids. And then they were all different, sizes, right? So you've got smaller cubes, you've got bigger cubes. And so, 2 of the kids were passing one of the bigger spheres back and forth, right? So they were just playing, passing the spheres back and forth. Another kid was stacking the smaller blocks as if you would see, a 4-year-old stacking blocks. And so at 4 years old, intuitively, the first thing I wanted to do was grab one of the biggest cubes. And I can even see it now, my little hands around this big cube. So I had my hands on either side of this cube. And intuitively, I knew that I could separate this cube with my mind. I knew that I could split this cube in half with my mind. So I literally, energetically, I start pulling this cube apart, right? Just sitting there. And all of a sudden I start to see, it's almost like the atomic mass or the solidity of the cube, it started to fade away. It's almost like started to tear apart. It started to fizzle. It's like the atoms just started to dissipate in the middle of the cube. Exactly what I wanted, exactly what I intended. And right before I could fully separate the cube, two different pieces, the door opens again just as quickly as they left. There was this medium height gray that came back in the room, and telepathically he said, "Elizabeth, please come with me." So, before I get the confirmation or validation of splitting the cube in half, I stop my little experiment and I go follow him. And he takes me down a hall through the big classroom, down a hall to this other room, to this, it wasn't as big as the big classroom, wasn't as small as the little room, but it was like a medium-sized room. Same sort of thing, a lot of desks, and then a board at the front of the room. And there was this tall gray, and this tall gray introduces himself, and he says that he is going to be my teacher. And then he just continued, and I'm the only one in this classroom. It's just me as this 4-year-old and this tall gray being. And he said his name was Henry. And so I always had an imaginary friend as a kid named Henry. I would always name all my snails and my butterflies and my whatever animals and creatures I made friends with. And their names were Henry. And so he proceeded to, draw a tree on the board in front of me after I think they were testing me, to be honest. I think they were testing to see how aware I was and what I was going to do with these blocks. I think I passed the test, and that's when they decided we're going to move forward with her individual training. And so I met Henry, and that's who I met with. Every time I went to the ships, I always connected with Henry as my teacher. And so he proceeded to draw this tree on the board, and he proceeded to draw these arrows going up and down the stalk or the trunk of the tree. And he was teaching me that the tree has what I have within me, which is energy. It's consciousness. He proceeded to tell me that every living thing on planet Earth holds this frequency, the same frequency that I have. And that was the first teaching and the first training that I got at 4 years old. And it proceeded as such throughout the rest of the experiences. But that one was pretty profound.
Interesting. Wow. And then, are they still coming, or have you had other experiences after those? I guess 2 periods when you were young, and then when we were in your. How old were you when you were 18? I guess, right?
Yep. Yeah. So
okay.
Really, ever since 18, I've been having very vivid flashbacks and recall to past lifetimes off this planet, whether they be tall gray ambassador, a lifetime as a tall gray ambassador, or as a Palladian or a Lyran warrior. I'm having constant communication with interdimensionals. Most of the time, my communication these days is going right to the Galactic Federation and speaking to different councils to receive information for the whole of humanity. And it's that information that I relay in my videos on YouTube and such.
Okay. Feedback? Okay. Let's break that down a little bit. So, are these past lives or simultaneous lives? A lot of experiencers are realizing that we're many places at the same time. The time is just kind of illusion. But anyway, however we see it, it's fine. Let's break down the different incarnations that you've experienced as an extraterrestrial. So, you're going to these meetings. Tell us a little bit more about the meetings. How many people, how many beings, how many species are they? Any other humans? Are you the only human? Where are they taking place?
Yep. So I was first introduced to the Galactic Federation back in 2011, and I specifically recall and remember the date. It was December 21st, 2011, right before 2012. we were all thinking the world was going to end. Things were shifting. And that's when I was invited by a Palladian being who astral traveled into my apartment. And he invited me to this meeting, on the 21st. And he said that it was for all members of the Galactic Federation. Now, of course, at that time, I didn't know what the Galactic Federation was. And the way that he explained it to me was that the Galactic Federation is just an organization of many different interdimensional species and beings that are here to help humanity and planet Earth ascend into a new vibrational frequency. And they do this for many different species in many different dimensions all around this universe. But they're the main sort of organization that does that. So when I went to that first meeting back in December 21st, 2011, there were, I would say, hundreds of thousands of beings there, whether they be physical or astral. So I went there in the astral, but it was very, very clear and very conscious, and I was very aware of all of that. And at the time, I was astral traveling almost every day. So that was very normal and natural for me. So yeah, but ever since then, most of the meetings that I go to, there's many different councils that are a part of the Galactic Federation. There are councils for hybrid children. There are councils for, genetic experiments. There are councils for the different timelines. There are councils, for war. There's so many councils. The one that I specifically go to most often is the Palladian Security Council. It consists of about 8 Palladian leaders. I don't know what else you want to call them. And they strictly deal with any sort of security issues or measures around planet Earth. So anything that's going on in relation to, it could be a volcano, it could be, it could be a war, it could be, an outbreak, it could be an ascension symptom. But they're the ones that I typically get information from, and I go astral travel up to the giant mothership that hangs out outside of Earth's atmosphere to gather information from them on a monthly basis.
Elizabeth, did they say anything about the coronavirus?
Oh yeah, they've said many things this past year. So mostly they it's interesting. They do kind of laugh a little bit because they've been watching this thing unfold and manifest and, just basically unfolding and manifesting. They said that this virus was created many, many years ago and that it was always contracted to be released. They didn't say it was natural or organic at all. They said it was created and it was released, and it was always intended to be released at this time in 2020. Now, the reason why they laugh and chuckle at this is because there are nefarious agendas on this planet and nefarious beings who believe that they're getting away with something with their agendas. The Galactic Federation chuckles because the elites who are trapped and manipulating this matrix, they believe that they've got the control. The Galactic Federation has always been in control. They have always looked at the highest timelines. So although the elites think that they're still in control and they still hold the power, they're actually now feeding into the overarching plans coming from the Galactic Federation. Although this, in a lot of ways, has been a very, tough year for many people, it has also really woken up humanity. And it was always meant to be this huge push of awakening for planet Earth. So ultimately, we have to look at the highest timelines and the highest contracts for the collective. So many people are getting stuck in the lower contracts and the lower timelines for the collective, which is basically created and spurred on by the elites. I'm not saying that timeline isn't happening. I'm just saying that that's not the highest one that's existing right now.
So what's the highest contract, the highest level?
Yes. So the highest level of contract is that, and they gave me this timeline many years ago, is that between 2020 and 2024, there's meant to be, and has always meant to be in these contracts, a complete and utter collapse of the old reality in which we lived. So, all of the 3D systems, education, religion, economics, political, mass media, all of these systems need to collapse in order to reform. What we're having right now is this virus and pandemic and quarantine and all of that is actually creating this collapse. So as much as I would love to say, this is it, 2020, it was a crappy year, and this is going to be the end of it. This isn't the end of it. This is really truly only the beginning of that downfall, only the beginning of that collapse, which is a good thing. We need to keep in mind that the old system was not working for us, and we are shifting things to be in a better alignment for the collective, not even just the individual.
So what do they have to replace it? Or are we supposed to, what's happening? Because the outside interference, the collapse, or whatever this is, the perturbation, the virus that's making this the catalyst for the major change, that we always knew there was something like that. So you're saying that it's going to continue, there's going to be a total system collapse, but usually something comes in and creates a higher order. Now, I've been getting my downloads is that this operating system we have here is no longer serving humanity. So I've been studying different operating systems and how to manage and up-level humanity and all the systems to the next highest level. But what are you getting about? What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so we are absolutely upgrading our systems. Both our software and our hardware is being upgraded on this planet. And like you mentioned, Janet, we are upgrading our systems. We are reactivating portals and vortexes all around the planet. We are reactivating and helping Mother Gaia activate. And we are reactivating the consciousness grid that was created for us to connect to one another and to connect to pure source energy. We're reactivating all of that. We are reactivating the vibrational frequency on the planet so that we can once again go back to ancient Lemurian and ancient Atlantean days, right? Like this is what we're doing. And on top of that, with the reactivation of these ancient sites and the reactivations of these ancient portals, we are now starting to fully see the dissemination of all of the knowledge and wisdom that has been lost or hidden or kept from us from our ancient ancestors, from the indigenous people all over the world, and from crystals even are getting activated and unlocked. So we're really disseminating the information. People are receiving this information from the grid, and it's a very exciting time. Now, that's just an etheric level of an activation and a new system. So a lot of light workers right now are all being called to, put crystals back into the ground, to speak to Mother Gaia, to do energy work on the planet. Like we're all being called to reactivate this system. But on top of that, at a physical, visceral, 3D level, there are solutions to everything just waiting to be released. We've got cancer cures. We've got free energy. We've got a new monetary system. We have got the answers to absolutely every single one of the planet's woes, including pollution, including deforestation. We have the solutions, but they have been suppressed. It's been a full-time job for the elites to suppress these solutions. Now the elites are falling. Now the agendas are falling. They can no longer sustain their suppression, which means that at a certain point in time, once the Galactic Federation and some of the workers and some of the white hats that are on this planet give everyone the go-ahead, all of the solutions will be released. I don't believe that these solutions will be released before 2024. Once again, we have to collapse the old systems before the new systems, before the solutions are able to be released. So but things are happening a lot faster than what I've channeled before, and even the Galactic Federation is picking up on the rapid advancement of timelines.
You have a question?
Well, no, it's just what concerns me, April, is that there's still dualism, and there doesn't seem to be any way of reconciling with the needs of these people that you're saying, the enemy, the elites, Is there any way that our humanity can touch their humanity and we can evolve together instead of dissing them?
Absolutely. Oh my goodness, absolutely. It's actually really exciting. They have a choice to make. They've known for a very long time that they've had a choice to make, and they've chosen not to make that choice. Now things are getting a little bit scary for them. You know, they're starting to see the downfall of their community and the rising up of the power of the people. We have the numbers. So it doesn't have to be all or nothing. We're not moving from one polarity to another polarity system. We're moving from polarity consciousness into unity consciousness. All of these solutions, all of these new systems are in alignment with that unity consciousness. And the options that they have, the decision that they have to make is either, do you want to let go of your old ways and raise your vibration to a new frequency, which every single human being gets that option too? Or if you're stubborn and you're attached and you're still greedy and you're still wanting your old polarizing ways, then you're going to have to leave. These are the options, right? Now, not only is this the option to every single one of the corrupt elites that are out there, which is pretty awesome that we're even giving them those options, or that they even have those options, because they never gave us those options, right, to utilize our free will. But every single human being on the planet gets that option too, right? Do you want to be here? Do you want to raise your vibration? Do you want to change and benefit everyone? Or do you want to still just benefit yourself? In which case, we're going to have to ask you to leave.
Go ahead, Sasha.
Well, I just, I was listening to Bill Gates this morning, and I thought, he's one of them. He may have been an oligarch, but he's turning it all around the same way that Jimmy Carter did, and turning it into helping others.
Right, because everybody can awaken. Now, my question is about awareness. So we have these oligarchs and the royals and the elites and the rich and the powerful. How many are conscious of this extraterrestrial and interdimensional agenda? How many are in the veil and are just acting out because that's the monetary system that's been given to them, and that acquiring wealth is a kind of a program that we learn and we emulate, celebrate celebrities and, put them on a pedestal. So what part of their awakening is yet to come, or are they awakened and they're just saying, oh, I reject that? Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, great question. So it's really beautiful. So I just want to make a statement where, I believe that there are reptilian shapeshifters on this planet. I have confronted them. I have interacted with them. I have seen them, firsthand, both in person and in the astral realms. So from my, perspective, I do believe that they are the ones that are running the show, and they've been really able to manipulate this reality because they're slightly separate from this reality in that way. We're here, or we've been in the third dimension frequency. They've been in the fourth dimension frequency. We're now able to ascend to 5D frequency, which really just overrides and surpasses their hold on this reality. So there are a lot of celebrities that are, I believe anyway, reptilian shapeshifters. The ones who are at the top of the pyramid, those are the ones who, quote unquote, sell their soul to the devil to get famous, which is really, it's a real thing. But it's not the devil, it's just reptilian beings. And so those ones who are reptilian shapeshifters, who have gone through ritual, blood and sex ritual, to kind of be in that position, to have that amount of fame, to have that amount of influence and power, those ones in particular, they're fully aware of the agenda, maybe not fully, but they're aware that they're a part of that section of polarity. Especially they've been, given benefits for being a part of that. And what's really cool is that they're starting to shift as well. And there are a lot of famous shapeshifters who have been ritualized in, who are wanting out. And these are the ones who we, being me and the Galactic Federation, have kind of told them, hey, just wait. It's not safe to change it around yet. And there are some celebrities who are switching sides essentially, and switching their perspective and emitting the light and giving back. So we're going to see this much more. But if you take a look at the statistic where around the end of 2019, the beginning of 2020, in 1 month, I believe it was either December or January, but in 1 month, over 200 of the top CEOs from all over the world, the biggest companies all over the world, all took a step down. They all stepped back from their CEO position. And the reason why is because the Galactic Federation went to them and said, you can't keep playing this game. You can't keep holding the power. So if you don't step down now, you're going to go in a very embarrassing way. Like, we're going to call you out, and it's not going to be good for your reputation, right? So they were threatened by the Galactic Federation. Typically, these people in power have been threatened in the past by, say, the elites. Now it's kind of role reversal. Once again, you're going to be here for the collective, or you're not going to be here at all. And we're already seeing this change happen at a rapid pace. Same thing that I'm noticing and observing and witnessing with the royal family as well. They can no longer hold their power position. They're getting exposed, and good old Queen Elizabeth has to step down, but she refuses to. And that continues to be a weird power struggle. But yeah, so that's a little bit more of like an insider look at what's going on behind the scenes, in relation to the elites.
Let me make a comment and add something to that. I have an ongoing relationship with George, who's a reptilian. And when I was a young child, about 4 years of age, we started engaging. And I was terrified of him, and I was having like a battle with him. I thought he was trying to suck my soul out of my third eye chakra and my head crown chakra. But over the years, I've kind of done some work on it myself. And then when I was writing my story, he very clearly came to me, and we forgave each other. He apologized for frightening me. His intention was to just communicate with me. His form of telepathy was much more intense than like gray telepathy and other alien telepathies. When a reptilian pierces your mind, and it's like you're so raw and they know everything. With the other species, you maintain a part of yourself. So it's like a total. You're totally vulnerable. Anyway, so we had a forgiveness thing, and I was crying, and he said, I'm always going to be with you. I'm one of your guardians. So I've learned from my own experiences talking with other people that there are many experiencers that have good, relationships with reptilians. So it's just like any other race, color, creed. We need to lump them all because they're as complicated as humans are, as other aliens are. So that's one thing. So the other thing I wanted to know is, so you're saying that these CEOs, they're getting direct contact from extraterrestrials. How are they receiving this information? Is the Queen engaged with extraterrestrials, or are they interdimensionals? We hear all the David Icke stuff, but how much of that is real or true? So back to you.
Yeah, so I don't really know, David Icke's work or what he talks about, or really what anyone else talks about. I just know what I channel. And you bring up a great point, Janet. Absolutely. There are so many positive reptilian beings out there, and more every day they're ascending, more and more every day. Some of the darkest ones on this planet are choosing light, and they're choosing to not only just go into the light, but they're choosing to help humanity. It's really beautiful. Actually, as a matter of fact, there's an entire army of reptilian beings waiting to overtake their own people. They're, the ones who are existing for the dark. So I've been working, actually, believe it or not, I've got a reptilian that I work with, and she shows me all of the underground military bases, and we go over and we blow them up with pure white light together. And, we do a lot of work, in that way. And her name is actually Sasha, and her long name is Sashira, and she's really beautiful. So I'm a big proponent of, hey, there's good and bad in every species, sort of thing. But yeah, so it's just it's a really interesting time to be alive, and the way that these CEOs are getting contacted is actually through a boots on the ground galactic group of beings who I had the pleasure of getting introduced to. They are called, what are they called? TLS, the light system. They're finally just exposing their existence on this planet, which is pretty cool. And basically they are a part of, or yeah, I guess I would say a part of the Galactic Federation, but they are the physical human beings that are a part of the Galactic Federation that are embedded within every sector of society. And so in a physical way, they are the ones going to the CEO saying, hey, look, we know what you're doing. We know what you're a part of. You can't do this anymore. Kind of like a cease and assist, sort of conversation. And then these kind of CEOs or influencers or what have you have the choice of what direction they want to go in. But yeah, so that's kind of what I know about that. And it's really exciting how rapidly, how quickly things are changing and these beings are waking up and wanting to help and assist humanity more and more every day. That's what I'm seeing.
Right. Okay. So let's go over the structure of the Galactic Federation. So when I too went to meetings with over 100,000 unique species, and I was reporting, kind of like doing the State of the Union report, what it was like to be 21st century human female alive on the earth at this time in the United States in Maui. And they wanted to know how things were going. I at that point said, please, we need some intervention. Things are not going very well. That was a good 5 to 10 years ago. And I appear to go on a regular basis, but that was the one that came through the clearest. So it appears that we have kind of a Star Trekian society. It's much larger than Star Trek is shown, because they're, the 100,000 species that I interacted with is just but a tiny piece of all the different, these are sentient conscious species, and they only showed me the ones that I wouldn't kind of get freaked out, because they're concerned about my safety, and I'm still human, and I'm so they didn't show the ones that would be kind of way out beyond my ability to grasp and comprehend. And then I've been to the smaller meetings, and then now we're hearing of people that have gone to these meetings, like A.R. Borden and Michael Lee Hill, and et cetera, et cetera. So what do you know about these meetings? You said you go once a month. Tell us about your once a month meetings. What do you do? What's your role?
Yeah, so I'm basically just a conduit. I'm a messenger. I'm a relayer of information is really what I do. It's just I receive the information and attempt to have it in the purest form possible, and then, relaying it in the way that I can to humanity. And it was really funny. It was the Galactic Federation that told me that I needed to kind of come out to the world and be public back in 2016. That's when I really released all my stuff on social media. Before that, I was still channeling them every month. I just wasn't telling anyone about it. And then it was actually back in, it was literally this March of 2020, where they told me, we have a message to send to humanity, and we need you to say this. So it was the first video ever that I said, messages from the Galactic Federation. And that video, got like over 200,000, views, and all these people started watching my content, which was really just information relayed from the Galactic Federation. And I believe that these people in the past year that have connected with me are just really connecting to their star family, connecting with the Galactic Federation, which is so beautiful. So like I said, typically when I go there and ask for information or updates for humanity, it's all, security issues, right? What do we need to know? It's actually a lot less political, because they don't want me to get involved in the polarity of politics, and more or less the safety, the security, the upgrades within humanity, and what humanity needs to know in relation to these upgrades and ascension. And they even told me back in 2018 that it was very likely that planet Earth was going to get a big solar flare event in 2021. Of course, back in 2018, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, that's far enough in the distance. I don't have to worry about it. And, here we are almost in 2021. And of course, the solar flare activity has been off the charts lately as well. So typically I speak to the Galactic Federation Palladian Security Council with about 8 Palladian members. But now what I'm doing per month is I've literally just been called to do a monthly event for $11 per ticket, for my people. And I don't even know what's going to come through, every single month. I just open up my third eye. I go astral travel over to the Galactic Federation ship, and I ask for any being that wants to interact with me and wants to interact with humanity to come through and relay messages. So it's really cool. Like, I'm meeting species that I didn't even have a name for, right? Like the Surrey species, which is an aquatic species. The Lyrans have been coming through. The Octurians have been coming through. Even hybrid children have been coming through. And they all have a different mission. They all have a different position within the Galactic Federation. And not only do they relay, because I'm just curious, I'm like, what do you do for the GFL? Like, what does your day-to-day look like, right? What's your name? What dimension are you in? You know, sometimes I ask questions like, how do you eat food, right? Because those are just fun. But mostly it's, what do you want humanity to know? What do you want humans to know at this time? It's important. So what do we need to know? And they'll relay different pieces of information, biological information, sometimes political information, sometimes activation or symptom information, all of that stuff. But all the information is developed and transmuted and translated in a way to unlock a human being's DNA code, right? To help someone unlock their DNA so that they can very readily and very easily move to a new frequency.
So they're doing some DNA activation and unlocking. And what is that? What is the purpose of that? Are we going to be at a different vibratory frequency? Do we have to change in order to be able to exist in this next level?
Yeah, absolutely. Change is definitely required to move to the next level. So, I mean, we're talking about physical change and the collapse of your own systems that are not in the highest alignment with you. But we're also talking about vibrational change as well in order to move into this new frequency. I call it the 5th dimension frequency or 5D frequency, but the Galactic Federation refers to it as the New Earth or New Earth frequency. And that's what we're all moving into in order to basically live our best lives moving forward.
So those who don't choose to go, will there be a second Earth that'll go back to darkness and they'll go through the cycles of reincarnation again? There's all kinds of stories as to how this looks. What's the Galactic Federation about how this is going to look?
Yeah, as far as specifics in that regard, they really haven't said much to me. And I think the reason being is because we're constantly changing our timelines and potential future realities. Some I've heard that, potentially the humans that don't want to move on, they just simply pass away and reincarnate somewhere else that is more akin to their 3D frequency. And there are many other terrestrial planets that they could reincarnate on, and those kind of things. And we're talking about really kind of freak accidents, getting sick, really quickly. And those are just, once again, the people who don't have contracts to move forward or who refuse to change within themselves because they always have the free will to change their vibration and move into the 5D frequency. So yeah, ultimately it's always up to the individual if they want to change and move forward or not. But I don't really know how that looks on the other end of things.
Okay, you have questions, Sasha?
Yeah, you probably want to extend this to the after the break, but I'm very interested in the social arrangements of other societies. Like, do they have families? Do they have how long? Do they have liaisons with people of different species? What's their love life and their daily life like?
Right? Are they genetically? Do they have the same type of reproductive organs, or can they, have a wide variety of systems for reproduction? And I guess we will start at that for the break. But go ahead.
Yeah, let's continue that after the break. But every species is different. They're all very fascinating, and I love asking those very real kind of human questions as well to them because I'm just fascinated by the way that they exist and live.
Right. Do you have hybrid children? And then we've got like 2 minutes. Do you have hybrid children? And what species do you have children with if you have them?
I don't have hybrid children. Apparently, the children that I will bring through in this incarnation will be very heightened and have a lot of special DNA, extra DNA strands, if I may. So I don't have hybrid children, but I've interacted so many times on so many Galactic Federation ships with the hybrid children, and I can relay a little bit more about what life is like on the Galactic Federation ships because I know more about the Galactic Federation ship and the different species on there rather than, say, a planet somewhere else because I mostly deal with the GFL.
Okay,
so what's it like on the ship? What are the social relations? Who sleeps with whom?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, it's next. Every species does it a little bit differently, right? Like if you take a look at the Palladians, it's a little bit more Earth-like, a little bit more human. The Greys are very different indeed. They don't really have the same sort of family dynamics or husband and wife. A lot of the beings who work on the Galactic Federation ships don't really have a normal life like they would have if they were on their own planets. At home, say, for example. So the whole concept of a family and children, isn't really a big concept for them, on those ships. And it makes sense. I mean, they're there because they're dedicated to their work and their mission. But I also have seen basically adoption programs where different beings who work for the Galactic Federation can adopt different hybrid children because there are many, many issues that go along with the hybrid children and them not being raised in a safe or supported dynamic and environment.
That's you. We'll be back in 4 minutes.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Join Revolution Radio every Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Studio B for Momentary Zen with host Zen Garcia at freedomslips.com, the People Station.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
All right. Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Aloha, welcome back to the Sacred Matrix, and I'm Janet Care Lessin with my co-host Dr. Sasha Alex Lessin, producer Debra DeFranco on Revolution Radio, Studio B. Before we get back to our show and Elizabeth April, I'd like to remind everybody to please go up to the donation button on revolution.radio. And the left tab at the top, you can make your one-time donation, and the Patreon tab in the middle, you can make your recurring donation. And we do thank you very much for your donation, because that allows us to keep bringing you these shows. So, before we left, we were talking about life on board ship, but I want to give Debra DeFranco, our producer, an opportunity to ask April with any questions or give any feedback. Take it away, Debra.
So, Elizabeth, I had a question early on in your conversation. You mentioned that when you were 16, you did that quantum past life regression with your father, correct?
Yep.
Now, was he the therapist performing the regression?
Yep, he was the one putting me into that trance-like state to experience my past lifetimes.
What was his reaction to the results of the regression and what you guys learned?
He's done that many times before, so I don't think that it was in any way revolutionary. It was pretty cool that I've been, say, a leader, a thought leader, or a philosopher, or, some sort of channeler before. So it wasn't anything he hadn't heard. I think it was really the point where I started having the, extraterrestrial and some of the astral traveling experiences, where he was pretty kind of blown away, in that way.
So, and you talked about the solar flares that are going to hit the Earth. Now, there's solar flares and coronal mass ejections, and they believe a coronal mass ejection is what caused the flood, Noah's flood, right? That was the flood story. Is it going to be something as severe as that, or something more minor, like the solar flares that often pass us by?
Okay, yeah. So I'll just kind of explain the original message that I received in its purest form, right? Instead of trying to interpret it. So it was back in 2018. I was invited to the Galactic Federation ship. It wasn't one of my normal visits. It was kind of like a, hey, we need to let you know this ASAP sort of thing. I traveled up to the Palladian Security Council's room that I usually go to, and they have a holograph projector in the room. So the one guy, the one Palladian, he brings up this holograph projector, and he projects this image of planet Earth. And within this projector, image, there was this, it literally, to me, it looked like this giant, orange and yellow, almost like a fireball hitting planet Earth. And so immediately I thought, oh no, is this some sort of government laser? Is this some sort of other species that's trying to attack planet Earth? Like, I just didn't really know. And they said, no, this is a potential solar flare. And where I saw that it was going to hit the top of Russia. That's just what I saw back then. Everything can change. But I saw it hitting the top of the continent, I guess the continent where Russia is. And, they told me it was a solar flare. I didn't know anything about solar flares at that time. Those are the words that they use, but it's also all translated. So it's kind of tough. Semantics are difficult, especially English. It's limiting. And so then what else did they say? Oh yeah. They said that they were telling me that this solar flare, was potentially going to happen in 2021. And they said that it was 60% likely to happen. So they told me that anything could change, that all the variables could change. They said that they wanted to let me know this now in 2018 so that I could relay this message to the people. Not that this was going to be a for sure thing, that it was still around 60% likely to happen, but to get prepared. And so what they told me was potential to happen was that the solar flare or extraction or whatever it was, I don't really know all the different terms, was powerful enough to wipe out the electrical grid around planet Earth. And I even asked them, I said, is this just going to be for the one continent that it hits? Is this going to be for all the continents across the planet? And they didn't really go into much detail, probably because it was still only 60% likely to happen. I have checked in with them this year about the potential of this solar flare. They keep telling me to tell everyone to get prepared. And what I mean by prepared is, food and water, and basically, supplies for off the grid living for about, anywhere between 1 and 3 months, so it's better to be prepared in my books than not prepared at all. But yeah, and so they basically told me at the beginning of this year that if humanity as a whole were to be able to learn their lessons, then we wouldn't have to go through this solar flare event, and that there's something that they could do to deflect the solar flare that could potentially hit planet Earth. And so what I believe that they were implying in that moment was there's something that all of us collectively can and have the ability to learn within our quarantined status in this year, because it's affecting every single human on planet Earth. If we learn whatever it is that we're supposed to learn, which is probably like dropping the egos and dropping the old baggage and moving into a heightened vibration, if we learn that, then they basically said that we won't get hit or affected by this huge solar flare. If we don't learn that, then we're going to have to go through basically round 2 of what we've gone through in 2020, but just coming from a different a different cause, basically. Back in September, they said that, hey, humanity's not doing great on their lessons. I just channeled them 2 days ago on December 11th. And what they implied, without stating it obviously, was humanity is moving at a much more rapid pace than we were originally intending, which is a really positive thing. And, maybe moving forward before 2020 hits, I'll have to ask them directly again, what is the status of the solar flare, and where are we at this time?
Thank you for that answer, because I think a lot of people have been aware that there was an event coming, but it was very difficult to get clarity on what it was. And you just provided the perfect answer with what I think everybody needed to know. So thank you very much.
Yeah,
I'm passing my torch.
It's interesting. Most Americans, and actually most people, look for solutions on a technological level, but I'm a professional anthropologist, and so that the emphasis that you're making, April, is to come back to spiritual, and it's not technological at all. It's the same thing that you were able to separate the molecules of that cube with, and that you're not necessarily higher just because you got fancy machines than people doing ayahuasca in the jungle. And so I'm very interested in your analysis about whether we are, and actually having several months on our own is one of the ways to practice getting away from the material and getting much more into the spiritual.
Yeah, the download I've been getting is we have to return to love, and these things that happen, the viruses and the natural disasters are a reaction to our disconnection and not loving each other. And so it is a spiritual reconnecting to the awareness that we are one, and we can all be loving and conscious and connected, and then nature and the universe, the cosmos, responds in kind. I was shown when I was 24 different potentialities of future history. So that was in 1958, and so we're definitely co-creators with this consciousness and this existence. And what we like the law of attraction and action. So what we put out there, we get back tenfold. So we can, turn around and have more retreats like you had, and do the silent meditations, and consciousness, connecting, reconnecting, remembering, doing past life regressions. Looking at when did we start alienating each other, and how can we reconnect? Okay, what was your question, Sasha? Did you have a question for Elizabeth?
It's probably for Debra and Elizabeth at the same time to talk about how to get through these difficult months of isolation and in a spiritually advancing manner.
Right. I did want to complete what was going on board ship, because we left all those questions hanging, and then talk about what we can do to, improve our time we have in further isolation until whatever this remedy is, whatever we're going to do, whether it's a vaccine or we're all just going to have herd immunity, or we're all going to, whatever's going to come. Okay, let's go back to the question before the break. You were starting to explain, well, on board, they have adoptions for the different hybrids, right? They can adopt the hybrids.
Yeah, there's a whole hybridization program with these beautiful hybrid kids from all different species, all walks of life, all over the universe. It is kind of sad because, they're on board the Galactic Federation ships. Obviously, their soul contracted them to be there and reincarnate there. But, they don't have that kind of semblance and normalcy of a family dynamic. So we're trying to change that slowly but surely on board those ships and kind of give more of that emotional support, more of that kind of human flair and that human essence to these hybrid children. But I remember the one time, I think most of my knowledge within other species comes down to the Greys and the Palladians as far as how they exist and live. But especially the Greys, I remember asking the one time years ago, I said, how do you guys eat? What is, you don't have sex organs. You don't go to the bathroom. So how do you exist? How do you get your sustenance? And they showed me this image of a Grey taking this tube of paste. And when the tube of paste came out, it was so dark, it was almost black, but it was actually this really, really dark green. And it was kind of this paste of nutrients. And then, you squeeze the tube, the paste comes out, you rub the paste on your skin, and then, as a Grey, I guess, and then you go into these, it kind of looks like a tanning bed. You lay down in this like kind of extended bed, and this huge light system comes up, above the bed, and the lights, I guess, bake in the nutrients into your skin. And they have to do that, maybe once a week, maybe once a month. Not totally sure. Their timelines are different and their time in general is different up on those ships. But I thought that was a very curious way of the Greys existing, up on those Galactic Federation ships.
Get it? Where do they get this green spirulina or whatever? Where do they get it? How do they make it? Or where is it from?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I haven't really tapped into exactly where the source is of where this green paste comes from, but I definitely don't think that they've got people making it on the ships. It feels like it would be more like imported or shipped in or materialized, and I know that they have those kind of machines like what we've seen commonly on, sci-fi movies and stuff.
Did you ever touch it or smell it or taste it?
Nope, never touched it, smelled it, or tasted it. But I mean, when I was a Grey, that's exactly what I did as well. Is that kind of green paste. But a lot of my exploration into my Grey lifetimes wasn't really focused on the eating component of it, more so, what I was there to do.
Now, if they create a hybrid with a human, do their children have genitalia, or do they operate the same as a Grey?
Yeah, good question.
How do they come out?
So, yeah, it's really fascinating. I've done a lot of work with the hybrids, and basically I call them the new humans, which is quite a scary concept for a lot of human beings. So it's, I really haven't done a lot of videos or spoken very much on my own channels about the hybridization project. And I asked the Galactic Federation, should I be talking about this more? And they said, this is not the focus of humanity right now, right? But basically, they're starting another genetic experiment. They started this way back in the day, and the genetic experiment is to pair the Gray's DNA with human DNA, and to create this half gray, half human hybrid. Sometimes they're referred to as the Essassani, as a species. I call them the new humans. And yeah, they're really beautiful. They are quite tall, right? Because, we're taking tall gray DNA. So they could be anywhere between like 6 feet. Yeah, probably around 6 or 7 feet, but not scary tall, I guess. Their skin is more of almost like, instead of like a pinkish, like human skin, it's more of like a pinkish gray. So it's not like super gray, but it's definitely more pale than you would see human skin as. It's still nice and soft, quite hairless. Their whole body is quite hairless. It took us a while to basically get hair on the head. It was so funny. Some of the early generations of these hybrid children, was very interesting, patches of hair in different places and a lot of frustration as far as why do humans even need hair to begin with, right? So there's a lot of issues back then. These hybrid children, the Essassani, they have much bigger eyes than human eyes, but still, in all of the different shades and colors that we have, green, brown, blue. And then what else about them? They do have genders, so most Greys are just asexual. They're kind of genderless. It's the frequency that they hold is more of the gender than anything. But these Grey human hybrids have genders. There's male and female. And they do have sex organs as well, which the Greys are very happy about because, they haven't really been able to organically procreate in a very long time. And what else about these? Oh yeah, their IQs are just through the roof. We're talking like an average of like 150 IQ going up to 200 IQ for these human Grey hybrids. But the problem that we've really had up on these ships is their emotional intelligence. The Greys have emotion. These Grey human hybrids, they have emotion because they take that aspect and trait from the humans. They're also very telepathic. But they don't really know how to navigate their emotions. They haven't really been taught the emotional intelligence. So the first couple of generations of these hybrid beings, have been very rebellious, have really not wanted to come to planet Earth, have been very logical. Like the first 2 generations of these hybrid children are much more Grey that I would consider than human. The last generation, we're actually really training them to be much more human. And it's really working out, and they've got way more compassion, and empathy than the earlier generations that we've worked with. So that's kind of where we are. Eventually we want to get to a point where we're actually releasing these hybrid beings and these hybrid children, onto the planet. And we want to get to a place where they are, going to be accepted by human beings. But the disclosure needs to come first. And, I'm happy to say that it's really already happening.
Have the hybrids been breeding with each other, and what are their progeny like?
Okay, I don't know what the word progeny means.
Yeah, what the kids.
Oh, what are their children like? Okay, interesting. Yeah, you know what? I honestly feel like they are restricted from procreating with each other, because right now it's a very controlled environment. And it still is to this day. And it's almost like the populations need to be contained, for a particular reason. So it's still pretty limited, as far as where it can go. But of course, they are able to procreate with each other. And that's all been tested, and experimented and observed as well, because that's a really main component of basically, ensuring the success of that species.
Do they fall in love? Do they have friends? Do they have do they have a room to themselves, or what's their dorm room? What's their life like?
Absolutely. Yeah. So when they're kids, these hybrid children are all kind of raised, like, what did I call it? Like like almost like a galactic orphanage, right? Which once again, I don't think is a very suitable way to raise any sort of hybrid child, no matter how emotional or unemotional they are. So they're raised in a group setting. Then they're tested at a young age to see what their vibration, what their intellect, what their interests lead them into as far as a position within the Galactic Federation. Some of these hybrid children are actually, the Essassani hybrid children at least, are actually taken to a very similar density planet to Earth, another terrestrial planet similar to Earth as far as the gravitational pull, the vegetation, the structures, the buildings, the systems, the society is very different, but they're taken to these planets to acclimate to the density, to acclimate to the gravity. And I've actually seen the different training programs of these hybrid children. Some of them are being tested and trained and to be a part of the Galactic Federation civilization, and some of them are being tested and trained to be a part of the Earth human civilization, which I believe won't be for another little bit. But I've also seen, it's really cool, they have holographic simulators, which are basically like giant rooms that you step into and you can kind of input your simulation, and there's an Earth simulation. So they're kind of put to the test as far as like maybe it's a social, simulation where they have to get along with human beings in a social environment. And it's really such a joy to watch them and observe them interacting with human beings. And I laugh so hard when I observe their training, just because I feel the exact same way being on this planet. Like, yeah, of course that doesn't make sense. Yeah, of course polarity doesn't make sense. Yeah, of course, greed doesn't make sense, but this is the world that we're living in, right? So I get it. Like they're so confused. There's so many things that really confuse them because it's not efficient. It's not effective. It doesn't help the whole. Like it's just not the way that they think and perceive and exist. So, and the other thing too is they're put into these, simulators as well for the density, because the density up on the Galactic Federation ships is very different than the density here on the planet. So their bodies, especially as gray beings, who exist in 6th dimension frequency, their bodies just simply aren't used to the density, the gravitational pull of this planet. So they're also put into the simulators for quite a long time per day, just to get used to the gravity here.
Do they play basketball?
They have social systems. One time I asked many years ago, I said, do you guys do drugs? Like I was so curious. Like, do you guys have bars? Do you drink alcohol? Like, what's your, how do you guys party, right? And, they do have some sort of synthetic, mood alternator, some sort of stimulant. And what it looks like is these little test tube almost of clear liquid. And I guess it depends on what kind of state, alternative state you want to be in. But it's kind of like you go up to the bar, you make a statement of, what kind of state you want to be in. And there's this little tube that's given to you. And there's also like a time, like how long do you want to be in this alternative state? And you say, 2 hours, and all of a sudden, maybe you feel elevated, maybe the serotonin is released or what have you. Maybe you want to feel a little bit drowsy and a little bit drunky, and there's just different states for different things. They also have music as well, and kind of what I would, refer to as like a rave or some sort of like DJ sort of type of thing. They don't have traditional instruments that we have, like wind instruments or string instruments. They have mostly electronic music. And that's why for me in this lifetime, that's really all I listen to is electronic music, because it really reminds me of what we have up there on the ships. That's a little taste of what their society is like.
Did you ever try any of their little special substances?
No, I mean, I'm sure as a gray when I was up there on the well, you know what? I don't even think so as a gray, because I was the ambassador of my species. Like I was pretty, I was pretty responsible to say the least. But usually when I go up there and I observe them, just kind of interacting on that daily basis, I'm typically in my astral body. So I don't even get to partake in a lot of the physical things that they partake in. And I don't even know how my human body would react to some of those type of mood altering or stimulating, experiences.
I wanted to go back to their emotional development, and I know here on Earth we have children that are autistic and on the spectrum, and so they have programs to teach them how to interact socially and to learn to read emotions. So it makes me think of the gray children that didn't have the same emotional development. Is it natures or nurtures? I want to say. Do they find that their emotions are different because it's genetic, or is it because they're not being raised in like a human family? And a lot of our knowledge and awareness is, emulating what people around us do. So they're not getting the modeling they need to create these emotional responses. What can you say about that?
Yeah. So it was a couple of years ago where I was called for an emergency meeting with a council. It was a council that I didn't recognize. It's some very ancient grays, and they were talking to me about the huge issue that they had in relation to these Essassani hybrid children. And they basically said that at the rate that they were going with raising these hybrid children, these children and even the adults of the children going into the adults will never be able to be accepted by humanity. Humans will never accept them because they don't have the emotional intelligence. And so, so I asked them, I said, take me through the journey of one of these Essassani beings. And so they took me through the whole journey of, impregnating the mother here on planet Earth, and then after a 3-week period of or even a 3-month period, eventually the baby is taken out of the mother, put into some sort of incubator, or I don't know, some sort of almost like a fetal sac, but in a technological way up on their ships, and then taken to full term in this weird fetal sac. And then the child is, quote unquote, born on board the ships and then raised in that group environment. But once again, the way that they're being raised, they said that they have an issue of they don't have enough emotional workers on board the ships to raise and to nurture every single one of these children. So the children are growing up much more logical and analytical and playing with their gray side than their human side. So we went through all these different timelines. So I asked them all these questions. Well, what if, and it's funny because one of my questions was, what if you take the mother, right, bring the child to full term in the human mother, then you abduct the human mother during the period in which she has to give birth, then she gives birth on board the ship, and then after giving birth on board the ship, you introduce the mother to the child, say, hey, this is a hybrid child. We have to keep them on the ship for now, but we want you back to nurture this child, right? So that was an option. And then there was other options that I raised, and there was problems with every single option. And then I said, to this council, all telepathic, I said, and we're literally all coming together consciously and going down these different timelines to see what are the best options for these poor hybrid children who just aren't getting enough human expressed within them. And so then I said, well, what were to happen? This was back in, I want to say maybe 2017, 2018. I said, what were to happen if we took a mother and let's call it a very open-minded mother and a very open-minded human father, and you embedded the gray DNA within the fetus, which they knew how to do very easily. And so there was a hybrid child growing within the mother. And then what if the mother at this point in time were to actually even give birth to the hybrid, half-gray child? And literally we went through, it's so crazy, we went through the timeline of the entire child's upbringing, right? So what we saw in the projection was, once again, a young, open-minded mother and father. When the child was born, the child looked different. The skin looked a little bit different. The eyes were much larger than usual, but still, the parents loved the son nonetheless, and it was a boy. And everything was fine in the upbringing and the raising of this child. when the child started going to school, like even like kindergarten age, there were differences. All of a sudden the child started recognizing that he looked a little bit different, that he acted a little bit different, that his intellect was different. And it wasn't until, going into the school system, the public school system, which was probably a big no-no, where the son, the little boy, wanted to make a good impression. So he started showing off. And one of the things that he started doing was telekinesis. And in the classroom, he started levitating objects. And all of a sudden, all the children started freaking out, and they knew exactly who it was. It was the weird-looking kid in the corner who was levitating objects with his mind. And the teacher freaked out, and then there was a teacher-parent meeting that was called, and then within the matter of 3 days, so here the child is, I don't know how old the child was, maybe around 4 or 5. Within the matter of a couple of days of this experience happening in the classroom, the government was called, and boom, there you have it. There are the men in black coming through. The child is swooped up. The parents are told, never speak about your child again. We're relocating you. Da-da-da-da-da. The child's put into a test facility taken by the human government, which wasn't so human. And so we went through the whole timeline of, hey, why don't we just, have the child be born on planet Earth? So they're really incorporated within the human system. And that was a huge no-go because society just wasn't ready for something like that yet. Now that we're seeing the disclosure of the Galactic Federation, now that we're seeing the disclosure of alien life forms and the CIA releasing these top secret documents, now we're starting to see, hey, this is possible, and a child like this has the capacity to be accepted. And it's getting more and more realistic moving forward. We did create a short-term solution, which was basically hire more human beings, especially human females, into the Galactic Federation, especially with these hybrid programs, and still raising them in that group setting, sometimes getting, adopted, like I mentioned. That was a very new program, but basically allowing them to be nurtured in a way that's going to allow them to have the skills at an emotional level to acclimate to humanity when the time comes.
I love what you're suggesting to them. I one of my specialties is perinatal psychology, and there's in an ordinary sequence of birth, there are things that happen that condition a person when you're small and floating in the womb. That's your paradise kind of perinatal matrix, and then when there's not much room and you're all cramped, that's hell. And then it's life-death struggle during labor, and then it's emergence into a larger reality. And we find that when we studied babies born by cesarean versus babies that are born by the process I just mentioned, there's these huge differences. For example, in the struggle of labor, that's where you learn to cooperate, where both mother and child are pushing in the same direction. So your idea of having the baby born to term and actually delivered in the human way is going to make them much more simpatico with the population here that goes through that process.
Yep.
I have a question. Let's see, where is it? What is the purpose of the hybrid children? Are these children like our next step of evolution? Are they stronger? Are they weaker? Are they smarter? What is the purpose of this program? They seem to be weaker, but mentally advanced perhaps. But if they have very weak emotional intelligence, then they're not going to be able to interact in society. So what ends up with these kids?
Well, they're not weaker. They're just not being raised appropriately the way that they need to develop that system. The emotional system is innate and inherent, but the nature versus nurture, it's got to be nurtured, right? It's there, but it's got to be nurtured. Now, that was the problem that we were encountering a couple of years ago. I think things are a little bit better now, taking a look at the program and the system. So the point of it is to integrate these new humans into planet Earth to help our evolutionary process. So it's the next big step. And I remember I got yelled at a conference that I did a couple of years ago in relaying information about the hybridization project and this whole Essassani, new human type of paradigm. And this woman, she said, Elizabeth, that's messed up. It's messed up that you are all for the side of the aliens, and they're going to come here and they're going to take over humanity, and we're not going to have any choice in it. And, it's a takeover, and you're trying to, I don't know, I guess prepare humanity for this takeover. And I said, whoa. What I said to her is, I said, imagine going back in history. Imagine going all the way back to our first evolutionary steps. If we were not a hybrid species, if we were never helped along in our evolutionary process, if we were never given that missing link that was from extraterrestrials, we wouldn't be here today. We would still be apes in the cave. We wouldn't even have fire at this point in time, let alone having computers in our hand. Okay? So if you have anything to say about the evolutionary process and the next step for humanity, take a look at our history. They've been interacting with us since day one, and I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful that we have evolved so rapidly in such a short period of time. It's unheard of in natural evolution. So why stop their help now? Why say no now? They helped us get here, and we can't even imagine the splendors of our next evolutionary step. So they're not here to take over. They're here to help us. They're here to integrate. They are literally designed to be the best of both worlds. They are designed to have the best characteristics and traits of the Greys and the best characteristics and traits of the humans to create this huge evolutionary leap forward. And when I was originally told about the hybrid project, that was around 2011, 2012, they told me that they said it was about 30 years from that point that we were going to start to see the integration of them on this planet, on boots on the ground, incorporated into humanity. And they said around the 40-year mark, 40 years from that point, it was going to be more of the integration, more of them coming to this planet. And then they said at the 50-year mark, 50 years from around 2012, it was going to be full on. We know that they exist. We know that they're here. We're working with them to better humanity for oneness of all. And then full on walking around with us. So that's kind of, I think, part of my mission on this planet is to make people aware that, there are many different Grey species. They're not all bad. They're not all evil. The Greys have gotten a really bad rap, in the past little while. And they're quite lovely and they want to help us. And this is the next, big part of them stepping in and helping us.
Yeah, there's two different things that happen like a deformity with humans. There's Progeria and Primordial Dwarfism, which to me it kind of looks like the Greys came in and interacted with humanity and they left these children behind to be raised by humans to see how they respond. And my grandmother's sister was a primordial dwarf, which means they're proportionate. They don't have the enlarged head and the shorter limbs, but they only grow to be. She only grew to be like 21 inches tall, and she didn't live very long. They died pretty young. But the tallest of the primordial dwarves is about 3 feet, so that's like a full Grey. Are you aware of any kind of program where they might be kind of sneaking in these children? Because these children seem to develop their emotional intelligence, but one of the shortcomings is they don't live real long. Most of them don't live past like 25.
Yeah, I haven't heard any of that. I mean, there's so much that I just don't know because I don't focus or ask those questions. But it could very likely. There's been many different species that have, been interacting with humans and humanity for quite some time. The Greys that are meshing with our DNA are tall Greys, which means that we're actually getting taller as we move into the evolutionary, with these beings. So yeah, I mean, there's so many different possibilities.
And 12/21/20. Somebody told me the other day, oh, they made a mistake. It wasn't 12/21/12. It's 12/21/20. 20, which we have in another week or so. Plus, we have the alignment of, what is it? What's it to?
The moon is in the 7th house, and Jupiter aligns with Mars.
No, there's another alignment coming up with two of the planets, and he says it's going to kind of look like the star
Jupiter and
Bethlehem.
Saturn.
Jupiter and Saturn. So what do you think about what's coming up? Is there going to be something with the ETs?
Yeah, I mean, we just had that Israeli man, space, ex-space defense minister or whatever he was. He just came out and he just said, the Galactic Federation exists, aliens are real. And I have to say this because I have such an educational background, right? So, I mean, we're already seeing the disclosure happening. It's quite incredible, especially for mainstream news networks to be trending #Galactic Federation. It blows my mind. That just happened a couple of days ago. So that's pretty awesome. Moving forward into this year, we've got the eclipse happening, I think tomorrow, the 14th or something. And then we've got the huge conjunction happening on the 21st. We've already seen the Schumann resonance spiking so high in December. I mean, it's unprecedented. I think the Schumann resonance spiked to like 800 or something crazy the other day. We are starting to upgrade and acclimate ourselves to these brand new frequencies. And I believe that December 21st is going to be a huge, 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 huge portal activation. And what I've channeled is that it's going to allow whoever has not done the work or who has not ascended, it's going to allow those people to do the work and to ascend. And then for those who have done the work, it's to move into a brand new vibrational frequency, so I think that that's going to be a huge consciousness awakening for so many people across this planet. And it's going to be quite profound, and we're only going to see more and more of these sort of random, weird astrological events happening and moving into 2021.
And which presidents know? I was talking to Gloria Hawker, and she said that she was in a large meeting, probably at White Sands in 1997. There were like 100 humans with their hybrid children. There was a panel with like the tall whites, the grays, the reptilians, the mantis, kind of a couple different variations on the grays and other species. There were representatives from all the countries, the big white tent in White Sands, and all the different presidents, 1997. So then we had this Israeli guy, general, saying that Trump knows.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you know about the presidents? Which
you have a little dog there or something?
Is there a doggy?
Oh, yeah, I have a dog.
Aww. Okay. Hi, doggy.
Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, it's been very tough for me to get any information on Trump or the presidents or really what's going on. And, the reason why is because the GFL really wants me to stay away from polarity and politics, right? I mean, the polarity has been so intense, especially this past year. So I'm actually quite grateful that I've been able to step back and stay away. But I have been hearing from insiders and channelers and whatnot that Trump indeed knows exactly what's going on. And that there is this coalition of physical people, quote unquote, I'll just, put people in quotes, that are on this planet that are fighting for the brand new system, for the light, for unity, rather than, the new world order or what have you. And more and more I'm getting this validation from insiders who are very connected to this group, probably the same group that woman went to, that Trump and the whole Trump family is very aware of extraterrestrials, and that Trump was supposed to be the one to release the information of the Galactic Federation. But I'm actually super glad that he wasn't the one to release that information, because half the world doesn't take him seriously, right? So I'm very glad that it was someone else, because Trump says a lot of things very often, and it just doesn't hold any validity anymore. So so everything, this Israeli guy, it was all planned. He was spoken to many times before from the Galactic Federation, and this coalition that's on the ground on planet Earth, and helping him disclose this information.
Excellent. Okay, so we're coming up in the last 10 minutes. What would you like our listeners to know about you and your work? You work with people. So when you channel past lives for somebody else, is that what you're doing? Are you able to read somebody else's past lives or other lives from other worlds?
Yeah, I'm able to tap into really any sort of visual. So seeing a person's chakra system, their aura, their Akashic records, all of their past lifetimes, both on and off this planet. But I do not do one-on-one sessions anymore. I am so freaking happy to make that statement and to say that, I'm really moving on to helping the collective, right? So I've got an amazing YouTube channel, just hit 100,000 subscribers like yesterday, which was amazing. And, that's tons of free information if people really want to go somewhere and wake up. And then I'm also writing books. So I wrote, my first book in 4 days, 40,000 words. I'm just about to finish my second book. I haven't released either one of them. I don't know why. I guess humanity's not quite ready yet. But yeah, and then I've got a third book in the works as well. I mean, it's just nonstop. I've now released 3 big online courses as well. One of the biggest ones is the Shift Masterclass, helping someone move from 3rd dimension density into 5D frequency. So Shift Masterclass from 3D to 5D. So my calling right now is to put out as much free information as possible. And for those people who want to deep dive and go really beneath the surface, I've got programs and books and content that people can explore as well. I also have a podcast as well that I started in the past year.
Wow, busy lady.
So
if somebody wanted to participate in, okay, so you can go to your website. What is it? ElizabethApril.com, right?
Yep.
Oh, you got ElizabethApril.com. Good for you. There's no other Elizabeth Aprils that were grabbing the that's always nice when you get your own name. I have JanetLessin.com too.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the hub. That's where you can find all my socials. But I'm also just Elizabeth April across all of my socials as well if someone wants to check that out. So it's pretty straightforward. But my courses and all of that are going to be off my website. And then the books, like I said, still haven't been released, but I'm going to probably release at least 2 books moving into 2021.
Now, what are your books called? And are they going to be available on Amazon?
Yep, they definitely will be available on Amazon. And then I'm also planning to do audiobooks as well, which I think is important. And so I don't really have the names totally set for one of them. But the first one that I wrote, the longer one, is all about the awakening. It's basically a complete and utter overview of every single step and stage of the awakening that someone goes through. It's a pretty basic book for your awakening, right? So, it goes all the way from having panic and anxiety attacks to ego deaths, all the way to, your mission in life, extraterrestrials, your star family, and quantum physics. So it really just kind of touches upon and overviews all of the different stages of an awakening. And then the second book that I'm writing right now, which came through as a huge next level download, so it's basically past life imprinting and the past life imprinting paradox. So like this book and the channeled information coming through is literally going to revolutionize past life regression, past lifetimes, Akashic records, and even imprinting of past lifetimes as we know it. There's a brand new technique that I'm releasing in this book that all of my interdimensional guides are calling a technology to help us completely eradicate all of our karmic reverberation instantaneously in the moment. It's a very, very, very powerful download, and I am very honored to be the one that it's coming through, because I don't believe this has ever been spoken about before.
Wow. Sounds pretty amazing. Yeah, we do past life regression. It's like people like to tell their stories. There's something about humanity that we're storytellers. We like to listen to stories and tell stories, and that's why we have movies and television and stuff. So if we go into this next level, like you wake somebody up, one of the problems I see is some people are awake. Some people are awake, but they're not conscious, right? They may be awareness, but they're not really conscious, and so they haven't learned to, open up their heart chakras and be actually kind. But then so that when they become awake, they go, I'm awake. And they kind of get like, full of themselves, right? And then some of them are like, well, I'm awake and everybody else is asleep, and so they have like the stranger in a strange world phenomenon, and they don't feel like they fit anymore. What do you find when part of the population is waking up and the rest are kind of still in this dark world? What are you seeing happening with your clients and students?
Yeah, it's tough, especially in relationships. I get this question all the time. It's like, what do I do with my husband who's still in 3D? So it's difficult. I mean, you can absolutely and probably should be holding space for your partner. I mean, if it was 5 years ago and you were really struggling with a partner who wasn't awake and wasn't supporting your own awakening and expansion, then I would say, maybe it's time to really go separate ways and create that shift within your own life. But these days, I'm saying, wait, hold off, because things are happening and progressing so rapidly that, your partner and your family members and these people in your life are going to expand eventually, and it's going to happen soon. I feel like 2021 is going to be another huge shift in consciousness and another huge push for humanity to get their stuff together, and awaken and ascend. So for me, it's, hold your ground, hold your frequency, don't give away your power, right? Just because someone's not at the same place that you are, but also at the same time, hold space for the people who aren't there. Try not to push them into a place where they feel uncomfortable, and just hold that compassion and understanding that, you were once there too, and that is okay to be there.
The things that bug you in your mate are really just resonances of your own disowned selves that are being sheltered by protective selves, and you can learn by what you judge in others what you need to process in yourself, in my humble opinion.
Absolutely, I would agree.
So what do you recommend? How can we get through these next few months, years before this ascension process? Because right now it seems like very dark times, but with the hope of the awakening. What do you recommend people do? How can they get through this?
Yeah, so at a physical level, I do still recommend getting prepared. I'm definitely a prepper, even though I live in like a 1-bedroom place in the middle of LA. I have food and water. If it were to hit the fan tomorrow, I feel prepared, and I don't want to scare people into thinking, oh no, I have to get prepared. I just want people to actually let go of their fear, because if something were to happen again, if we were to be forced into quarantine again or what have you, we're good. There's no fear there. There's no fight or flight that needs to happen in those scenarios. So that kind of physical I think is important. And then, of course, preparing yourself spiritually. Always, always, always holding the highest frequency, right? What do you want for yourself in the future? What do you want for humanity in the future? What does that look like? What is that highest frequency? And you have the conscious ability to hold that highest frequency. At the end of the day, we've got this huge awakening that's happening. So many countless people are shifting their conscious vibration. So anytime you get sucked into the fear anytime you get sucked into the elite's New World Order agenda or what have you, just always go back to the fact that things are happening. People are changing their perceptions. People are waking up. And this is a really beautiful time to be alive. It is not a scary time to be alive. It's really based on what you perceive. It's really based on what you choose to focus on. And we always need to be holding that vibration and that power.
So we're almost out of time. The last minute is yours. Tell people what you want them to know, how to reach you.
Yeah, absolutely. So like I said, Elizabeth April, on everything, you guys can find me. And ultimately I would say, it really does come down to your consciousness. You are a soul existing in a physical body. You are here for a reason. You have the power to change your life. You have the power to affect humanity as a whole, but you can't affect humanity in a positive way if you don't focus on your own change and your own abundance and your own ability to thrive first. It's not selfish to ask for something that you want. It's actually self-sufficient. And when we become self-sufficient, we actually break away from the matrix as a whole, and we're able to ascend the entire of humanity into the new earth paradigm.
And that's perfect. We're at the end of the show. Thank you so much, Elizabeth April. It's been a delight. Say thank you and aloha. Welcome. Sasha, come on, add your voice.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Debra.
DeFranco.
Thank you, Liz.
Thanks,
Much love.
Janet.
Aloha.